I literally thought this is my opportunity to get in front of Lewis House if they
Mhm.
posted about me on his account. So I went to my LinkedIn profile and I updated my bio. I signed up for this beautiful like LinkedIn, linked all my shows, but podcast producer, just in the rare chance he would open
Yeah.
his, because people run his account. Like he would open his
Mhm.
account. Well, they posted about me, and then I get a DM from Lewis House that said, "Hey,
Mhm.
congratulations on your reward." I was like, "Oh, thank you." Thinking it's this team. It's like, "So your podcast producer has a red table," and I was like, "This is not real."
Hello, everyone. I am Dani Wigfall, and this is the Design Your Remarkable Life podcast. Here, I interview incredible individuals who are leaving their mark on the world, generating wealth, and charting their own course. So get your notepads out and let's get into it. Mathew, I'm so excited to have you on the show. Such an honor, such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm
So,
really excited to be
no,
here.
absolutely. So I want to just dive right on into your entrepreneurial journey. Where did this start for you? Because even that is a step. Where did this start?
Yeah, absolutely. So, worked in corporate for a long time at different jobs, and I graduated with a film degree. So, although I was
Mhm.
working in like a lot of corporate jobs, I knew I wanted to get in film. But my dad was like, "You need to get a job. You have student loans and everything." So I did that, and I was lucky to work from amazing companies, which really shaped, I feel like, a lot of my entrepreneur journey and knowledge. So I worked at
Mm.
Apple and Disney and WeWork and Mindspace and all these incredible creative companies, corporate companies to startups. And it was really at, the WeWork and the mind space where being around entrepreneurs all the time
Mhm.
really brought out the flame of the entrepreneur spirit within me, which actually just comes from my family. Like my grandfather was an entrepreneur, my mom's an entrepreneur, my brother's an entrepreneur. It was
Oh, wow.
basically my turn. So
Mhm.
I remember I was working in San Francisco at Mindspace, and it was like my like third or fourth year in co-working, and then I started to get some interest for my company, so I started doing it on the side, and then I realized I was like, oh, this is actually, I love doing this, and stuff is coming to me. So I worked at my job for a year up there, and I was starting to get actually a lot of work in Los Angeles. So I had to make a
Mhm.
decision to be like, okay, do I stay here in San Francisco, extend? I mean, I went up to San Francisco to start the business, and that's where the spark started. But I started getting so much interest in the dream. I was like, I need to make a decision. So
Mhm.
basically, what I did, I was like, let's do it. So I went down, and I was like, I'm gonna do it on my own. And like I started with like Ubering and Instacarting and working in
Yeah.
retail and doing my
Ooh.
clients on the side. And this is before I was even doing podcasts. This is just for Rainbow, which is a video marketing company. So I started doing that, and then actually found out that, oh, it's really hard to do that on your own. So
Mhm.
I went and got a full-time job again. And I bring that up to say that, what you'll find in the entrepreneur journey, it's not going to be a straight line, and it's
Yeah.
okay to pivot based on your needs. And it just came down to like Uber and Instacart wasn't as much money as it was in San Francisco. I needed to make a shift for my needs. So I made that decision, and then it brought me stability again, in a space
Mhm.
where I could actually take my time to work on my dream, to really like think about it through methodically. Or just in a more sober mindset versus a need out of scarcity. I could go in a need out of
Right.
like, I want to make this choice, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
So in the pandemic, I was let go like 40 other million people, and I got another job in co-working because that's like what I knew, got a general manager job. And then when I was let go from that, I was like, okay, this is now the time. It was at the time of the pandemic where it was the great pause, where
Mhm.
nobody could be doing anything. And I had never, and I remember thinking on that time, I was like, I've never had the time and space just to stop and do and
Mm.
think what I want, because I always had to show up to work and then, maybe take lunch meetings or meetings after.
Yeah.
And I was just at a place where I was getting pandemic assistance and had some severance. And I was like, oh, I can maybe just chill. And at that point, I actually started working with my executive coach, Johan. And that's when I made the decision to focus on Rainbow again. And again, it was in marketing videos and things. But I actually fell into podcasting. During the
Hmm.
pandemic, I got a job. It wasn't even a paid job at the time. It was just a commission job to be a director of business development with an ad agency. And they said, hey, we have this idea for business development to do a podcast called The Brand Talks. Would you be interested in being like a co-host and producer? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Producer? Sure, I can produce anything. I'm a
Yeah.
producer. I'm a film producer. So I co-hosted and was on the show called The Brand Talks, and everybody on this show, like the majority of them, were all my contacts from Mindspace, from WeWork, from
Wow.
like Disney, so a very
Hmm.
full circle of all the people who I met who gave me the spark and the entrepreneur journey, and all these CEOs. They were the first people that I called to be on my show. So we were interviewing on the show in the pandemic. That's what everybody was doing. And I started posting about it on my LinkedIn. And then I got my contacts from my corporate world asking me, hey, can you produce a show for me? How much do you charge? So I Googled how much does a podcast producer make? And and then then my second show I did From the Future with Love with my coach Johan, he asked me to produce. I said, hey, I have an idea for a show for you. And he was like, actually, I already have a producing team. So I was actually able to join a producing team where I actually learned more of the ropes. So I was really lucky to actually learn the ropes of
Hmm.
podcasting from my first show
Yeah.
with someone who knew about podcasting. And then my second show, who had a team of a producer who I still work with today, and an editor who I still love and who's worked with a bunch of shows and got me started. So when I started posting about these shows From the Future with Love and the Brand Talks, my contacts started reaching out to me to say, hey, can you do a show for me? I remember my first paid show. It was really two at the time. One was with a company called Teal, which is a startup, which I love. And then I got three shows from a client I still have 4.5 years later, Novus Global. So on my
Mm.
first year, I did six shows,
Wow.
and it was like, and then I got dollars and cents, so seven shows within my first eight. Yeah, Alpha Beta launched too. Eight shows within my first year, and it just really came from. Um, I was like, okay, I really love this. Now let me focus on it. People were asking me of like what to do, so I brought in the Apple mindset with the training that they gave us when we were in retail. We never told
Hmm.
somebody no. We told somebody let's find out. So when I didn't know something
Hmm.
about the podcast world, I was like, let me find out, and I had the time and space to do it, and then the team who I was working with to do it, and I just became so interested in it. And then people just
Yeah.
started coming to me that I was like, oh, I guess this is my thing. But it wasn't that easy just to make the decision, because
Yeah.
I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I got a degree in film. So I actually had to
Hmm.
grieve the dream of being a filmmaker
Oh,
to be a podcast producer.
yes. Speak on it. Speak on it. Because I feel
And I
like that's
was,
something that,
yeah.
yeah, people don't talk about.
Hmm.
Is grieving one dream to go after another one, right? It's
Hmm.
like letting go of that thing. You touched on something so key, and I didn't even mean to cut you off, but I'm like,
Yeah, that's fine.
yes, that is a key piece that people don't even mention. You just see the
Yeah.
dream, you see the glitz and the glamour of it, but you
Hmm.
don't think about what did this cost this person or what did this person have
Right.
to let go of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to let go of the film with Dream, and I remember at the time, video the podcasts were just audio. There was really, I mean, there was YouTube out there, but it wasn't as big as it is now with like really everybody doing it. So yeah, I would like shift it to audio, and I still worked. I didn't wasn't working full time with it. I still had jobs. I was working for a startup as a creative producer, which I was able to just focus on producing, and then I was a senior creative producer at a company, and at that job, actually, I started to get more interest with Rainbow, and to the point where I took a risk to only take it part time, meaning that I had a set amount that I was making, but the rest was up to me. But I needed to do it because I already had signed clients, and
Mhm.
and so I was like, what do I do? Do I focus on my dream, but it's not making enough just to do it? So I had a conversation with my company to say, hey, it was actually when I was being hired on. They wanted me full time, but I was like, hey, I can't do full time, but this is what I can offer. So I think that's something to be bold about and say too. It's okay to ask for what you want. If that
Yeah.
company had said, no, we need you full time, I actually may have made the decision to go with them full time as a need.
Mhm.
But I asked for what I wanted, and I just came confident in my skill set as a producer. And they were like, "Yeah, as long as you can make this, this, and this work, we can let you do it." And then I got exactly what I wanted. I had the stability of a job, which I had a lot of connections with, and it allowed me to work from a place of more abundance, and then also give
Mm-hmm.
me the flexibility to do my own thing. So I did that, and then I was working with my coach Johan again,
Yeah.
and he was like, "What would absolutely thrill you?" And I was like, "Well, I've done like 8 to 10 shows. I think at that point it's been like 2 years, and it's going well, and I'd really love producing."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "I would love to get a network show." Well, I had never worked on a network show before. To
Mm-hmm.
get there, you have to get an associate producer role. You have to get, work your way up. And I remember I was in the interview process for this one associate producer job, and I never worked on a network show before. And they had deals with Amazon, and they were like, "Actually, you're too qualified for this." And I was like, "But I've never worked on a network show, but I had executive produced my own thing."
Yeah.
So they saw the skill set and value in me, and they were like, "We would actually be holding you back here." And at the same time, I just kept on applying. I think I applied for like 50 jobs. And then out of Indeed, an Indeed resume, I got
Mm-hmm.
a call from Red Table Talk, which is Jada Pinkett
Mm.
Smith's TV show and Will and
Yep.
Jada's company, Westbrook, to be a lead producer on a new show they were developing. And I was
From
like,
Indeed.
from Indeed.
Wow. Wow. Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
it was just really taking the focus, and I was like, this is what I want. I like worked on my resume and literally applied to everything, wrote cover letters, and I was like, why not? Because if they say no, my mom always says this, if they say no, you're back in the situation where you were, which is probably a great place. But if they say yes, that's the portal into something new. And so long story short, I remember they gave me 2 shows to choose from. It was their Let's Red Table That show. I got the interview, went through the interview process. That's incredible. And they're like, "Okay, we have 2 shows. We're looking for producers for Let's Red Table Talk, which was the Red Table rewatch show, or Navigating
Mm-hmm.
Narcissism, which was going to be a harder show, but it was with Dr. Ramani Durvasula, who's a huge
Mm-hmm.
name in the clinical
Mm-hmm.
psychology and narcissism
Yep.
space. She's the world's leading expert. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember I chose Navigating Narcissism. So I got this opportunity and chose the harder show. And I remember I had an interview with Ramani, and I think within like 3 days, and I rushed to Barnes and Noble before they closed, bought her book, and was just like reading it because they were like, we need somebody who like knows it. And I mean, I had an idea about narcissism, but to produce a
Mm-hmm.
show, I had to, you know,
Yep.
have knowledge about
Mm-hmm.
it. So I got the book and crammed as much as that book I could before the interview and thought of personal stories. I watched every YouTube video I had time for. I just like prepared and went to it. I was like, this opportunity doesn't come, often, especially through Indeed.
Yeah.
So long story short, I got the job as the lead producer on a Red Table Talk show with Dr.
Wow.
Ramani. And our
Wow.
first year it was with iHeartMedia, and Jada was my executive producer, and I mean, just all kinds of craziness. So yeah, I mean, I was like driving to Calabasas to a studio, working hand in hand with the Romneys, sending like
Mm-hmm.
emails to the team, and it was definitely a huge imposter syndrome thing because I was like, I've
Yeah.
only done things for myself. What if I mess it up? It's like, although I have the
Mm.
confidence, although I've put in the reps,
Right.
they're putting their faith in me.
Yeah.
So I remember at the time I stopped every other side project I was doing. I took everything off of
Mm-hmm.
Rainbow. I talked to my clients. I was like, I hired another person to run it. I was like, this needs to be my sole focus. So I actually paused Rainbow. I mean, there was an ongoing client, BNI Performance, and I think another one that just kept going. um,
Yeah.
but that was where I had the first opportunity to hire a producer. So my dream of hiring a producer, I hired someone part time. But I was like, Rainbow needs to stop now because my dream is to really get into this. So I mean, our first year we hit like several million downloads, hit the charts, got a Podcast Academy Award nomination. So like,
Congrats.
thank you. So my first
Yeah.
season of the
Yeah.
show, I'm going to the Podcast Academy Awards as a nominee. Like, madness.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And I
And
can continue with the
like
story, but I could talk all day. Let me give you a moment to
no, it's just so many amazing moments in there as well too. But I think one thing that stands out to me is you having this abundant mindset too, of just like instead of like, ooh, let me hold on to these secure jobs, you had that ability to be like, nope, let me let go of this so then I can go after this. Let me
I was
let
never
go of
using
this, or
that.
even
I was doing it
ah,
scared. I didn't have the space of
Yes.
like abundance, let's go. No, I was like, what
Mm-hmm.
if this doesn't work out? Let me have a backup plan. I was still doing some rainbow on the side. I had trauma with
Yeah.
being let go from a job a while, like
Mm-hmm.
years before.
Mm-hmm.
What if I had messed it up?
Mm-hmm.
So it was abundant in that I was taking the leap, but I will
Yeah.
say I was doing it scared. But I think
Yeah.
that's where the
Yeah.
work comes in, and that's where it's real. You're even in when you're in these places, and even when the place I'm out with my company, it's even more scary because the
Mm-hmm.
amount of work that I have is the amount of contracts that I have. Because I
Right.
only have like a handful of clients that are ongoing, but those
Mm-hmm.
ongoing clients don't fill up the time. I'm constantly having to hustle, constantly trying to get a
Yeah.
new deal. So like after I'm on
Yeah.
set, I'm actually taking a new client meeting and doing outreach, and but these are all the
Mm-hmm.
skills and things I learned with the startups and the sales jobs that I had and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So stacking skills on top of skills and still hustling and going after it. Yeah. And doing it scared. I love what you said about doing it scared. It's like, yeah, I was scared. It looks like this was like, oh yeah, I had all the confidence in the world to just like, let me pause that and then start that. It was like, no, I was mentally battling in those
Right.
moments.
And actually, it
Yeah.
was actually a bigger risk for me because it was a 3 month contract at the time.
Ooh.
So, and I remember when
Wow.
I was interviewing for a full time job. I actually had a full time job offer. And then this job, so I had a full time job offer with a salary, and it was with a tech company, and it was in podcasts. I was a podcast manager for this tech company, just like getting people on their platform. So I literally had a full time offer, or Westbrook and Red Table Talk saying this is a 3 month gig. But then that 3 month
Yeah.
gig turned into a second season, turned into a year contract, turned into where I am
Wow.
today. So it was a huge
Wow.
risk. I literally had a full time offer letter, and I turned it
Yeah.
down to jump into this.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you do that? That part. How did you turn that down? But also, you also talked about this imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
And like, there had to be a point where you're like, you know what? I'm going for it. I have to get past or work through this,
yeah.
to get that
Well,
year long contract.
actually, what was interesting, I took a risk, and so I was working for this company. I applied for Red Table. I don't even remember when. And then when I was starting with this
Mm-hmm.
company, I was contracting with them, and they gave me a full time offer when all of a sudden I heard back from Red Table. So
Mm-hmm.
they gave me a full time offer, but since I was working with them, I said, "Hey, I got this incredible opportunity. It's a once in a lifetime thing. It's a
Yep.
temporary thing. Would you actually be open to me then going more part time with you to then go full time when the contract ended?" And they said yes. So I actually
Mm-hmm.
did this 3 month job with a backup plan, but then I didn't
Mm-hmm.
end up needing not going to that backup plan.
Yeah.
Um,
No, not at all.
So it was a really
Yeah.
scary conversation to have when I had that offer from, Red Table and that full time offer. In my full
Mm-hmm.
time offer meeting, it was the conversation was actually, can I go part time? And they saw my value and said yes. So that like is advice to say to people, even if you're at a job that's not in alignment, you never know how it's
Mm-hmm.
going to help you, and you never know like who that person is going to meet. That person is actually they're now actually a client years later,
Mm-hmm.
through
Yeah.
connections at that company. They're actually clients. Like one of the persons at
Mm-hmm.
that company is now working for me as my business development manager because I held on to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was like, if I have the capacity to work more, I'm gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
So my life for 3 months was like very full because I didn't know what was going to be
Yeah.
happening in 3 months. I didn't know that that contract actually got extended, and then we got a new season. So I
Yeah.
hustled because this was the dream. This was the focus.
Wow. Wow. So, how do you manage your time with all of that? Let's talk about during that time in that period.
Yeah.
How did you manage your time with all of that? Because, I mean, that sounds like one, a lot of work, but
Yeah.
two, it's not even just a lot of work. You got to be working on the right stuff at the right time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to like at 5 o'clock, I could turn off and watch TV, or I could be
Mm-hmm.
working towards my dream. And I chose
Mm.
working towards my dream. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Mm-hmm.
finding balance in that was the hardest. I remember there was like months straight where I didn't have like a day off. So, like, learning that balance and everything. But
Yeah.
I will say those reps that I put in got me to where I am today,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it was a non traditional path. So,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't take vacations. I would tell friends, no, I can't do dinners. No, I can't do happy hour. I didn't do dinners or happy hours for months because that was my focus because
Yeah.
I had an opportunity, and I was
Mm-hmm.
just setting up myself for success. And I was able to get out of a lot of debt with working like a full time
Yeah.
job and that job on the side. So that was a focus
Yeah.
and helpful as well to bring, like help me with some mindset,
Mm-hmm.
piece through that time as well. So that was like a hustle thing where I was like, okay, I need to dedicate to this to actually get ahead, so that
Yeah.
I can focus on the dream and Rainbow if it ever comes. It took like a year and a half before I did Rainbow full time again. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I mean, I just made a decision where like every now and then I would do a dinner, but it was just like I was just so excited about it. That's the thing. It's like when you're on your path is when it's easy. You
Yeah.
know, it's
Mm-hmm.
like at the end of the
Yeah.
day, the job is actually quite simple. You record people talking and putting on the internet. Like it's really not that hard. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
a lot that goes into it, but for me, it's the mission. Because with
Mm-hmm.
working on navigating narcissism, we were interviewing victims of narcissistic abuse and healing
Yeah.
people's lives. I was seeing the emails that were coming in from people saying, I actually went and took the leap to divorce my narcissistic husband after listening to your show. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it was worth it because all the shows I was working on beyond high performance, which was helping people take the next leap, all these different shows, is purpose driven work. So I think the
Yeah.
reason why I was able to do so much is because I felt like I was in alignment with my purpose and my vision. Like the mission of
Yeah.
Rainbow Creative is to cultivate meaningful conversations that promote healing and radical change. That's what gets me up at
Mm-hmm.
5 o'clock in the morning. That gets me to work out. That gets me from working
Yeah.
the 7 to 7,
Yeah.
and fitting in the
Yeah.
TV show when I can, because I know that each episode I make can help people. If somebody actually applies the principles, they can shift their
Mm-hmm.
path in life. And I don't take that
Yeah.
responsibility that I was given lightly.
Mm, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So even at that point of doing 8 shows, right? I'm not even
Mm-hmm.
talking about where you are right now with 17. We will get to that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
doing 8 shows, that is someone's dream. Do you have any advice for someone that was like, how do I get to those 8 shows if, let's say, I don't know anybody or I don't have these connections? Is there something that they can do to make their odds better or create more opportunities for themselves?
Absolutely. Show up and put in 110%.
Yeah.
Because I grew from referrals because I did a good
Mm-hmm.
job. I followed through. I remember even my first show, it was like $2,000 for a season. It was literally nothing because I didn't know what to charge and I was like figuring it out. But I
Yeah.
put in so much effort. I was treating this as, the world's best show. And then I was kind through it. I followed through. If there was a mistake, I learned from it. And it was through those experiences of dedication, of being kind, of putting through, where my name was then put in other people's, like my name was put in my client's mouth as a referral, basically. Just like
Yeah.
the Bible verse says that, your your name will be put in places, higher places. And just by like
Yeah.
showing up and doing a good job, my business has grown 90% through referrals.
Wow.
I just started
Wow.
outreach just to continue to
Wow.
grow. But it's all come
Awesome.
through posting and people saying, this guy is dependable, work with him.
That matters.
Because
Your
they'll be at
reputation
brunch.
matters.
Yeah, they'll be at brunch.
Yeah.
They'll be talking about something. They're like, hey, what are you working on? Oh, I'm working on this podcast. Oh, I know somebody's working on that podcast. Who do you know? Oh, I know Mathew. He does such a good job. Talk to him. That's literally how my business has grown.
Wow. Awesome. Good. Reputation matters.
Yeah.
Hard work, putting that work in, showing up for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Man, showing up for people is so important.
Oh,
Geesh,
yeah.
people really just
Fulfill
miss
your
that part.
commitments. Yeah. Fulfill your commitments is
Yes.
key. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So now we went from 8 shows. Take us to 17. Okay. Like, how did you build your team? How did we get to 17 shows that you're actively producing right now?
Yeah, so it was really so I remember I was working at Red Table, and
Mhm.
I was listening to, so this will take us to there. I was listening to the School of Greatness, and they had just launched a show called The Daily Motivation. I was
Mhm.
listening to it, kind of like my nightly routine. It was like a short show, and they had a survey that said if you fill out a survey, you can win a $500. If you fill out a review, you could be entered to win a $500 Amazon gift card and fill out the survey. So I was like, okay, cute. I did that. I won the $500 Amazon gift card, and I was like,
What?
cool, and I've like bought things on my wish list. The AirPods I still have now are from that.
Yeah.
And and then I got an email from the marketing team that said, "Hey, we're going to post about you, about your winnings." And I literally thought, this is my opportunity to get in front of Lewis House if they
Mm-hmm.
posted about me on his account. So I went to my LinkedIn profile and I updated my bio. I signed up for this beautiful like LinkedIn, linked all my shows, but podcast producer, just in the rare chance he would open
Yeah.
his, because you know people run his account, like he would open
Mm-hmm.
his account. Well, they posted about me, and then I get a DM from Lewis House that said, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
congratulations on your reward." I was like, "Oh, thank you." Thinking it's this team. It's like, "So your podcast producer has her at table," and I was like, "This is not real."
Yes.
This show
Wow.
has been around for 11 years, a
Yeah.
top 10 podcast for forever.
Yeah.
It is the show that really has set the standard of all top shows, and I was DM'd
Mm-hmm.
by the guy himself. And
Mm-hmm.
within that week I was meeting with his team. And
Wow.
I actually, yeah, so when we touched base, it was in my second season of Red Table, and we just like kept in touch. I still had my contract to end, but once my contract was ending, I reached out and they had an opportunity. And then I was able, like, right when my contract was finishing, I got a full-time job as the producer of the School of Greatness. So
Wow.
I was doing guest prep. So all of a sudden I went from, this 2 seasons of Red Table to like literally recording up to 6 episodes a week, where I was doing guest prep for the episodes. I was the only person in the studio taking photography, doing the cameras, running sound. And then I actually led
Mm.
the YouTube as well growth, and I learned a lot there. And it was crazy. So I got not
Yeah.
my first show, my second show, and then the full circle moment there. Jada, who was my executive producer at Red Table, was a
Mm-hmm.
guest on the School of Greatness. Dr. Ramani was a guest on the School of
Yes. Yep.
Greatness.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then like all these, I mean, I met Rick Rubin, I met Rich Paul, I met Bill Nye, I played ping pong with Bill Nye before his interview. I met Ellen
Wow.
Langer, I met Joe Dispenza, Wayne Brady. I mean, all
Mm-hmm.
these incredible people. All of a sudden, I'm in the room with these people, miking them up and learning from them. And it
Yeah.
was really like a true crash course and everything. And it was there where I really learned how the podcast business runs. And I was going to stay there for a while. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then the universe said, okay, you learned what you needed to learn. Now it's time for you to step out and
Yeah.
chart your own path. So
Yeah.
I remember I was like working there and then figuring things out, and it was like they're 9 to 6. But then there was something in my spirit that said, it was again like with the WeWork thing. I was around all these entrepreneurs. It was time to do my thing. I'm around hearing all these conversations of like reach for your dreams. But I had
Yeah.
had my own company before. If I had the School of
Mm-hmm.
Greatness 5 years ago, I would have been doing that for 5 years. But the
Yeah.
difference is I had already had a company that had 8+ shows. So I didn't intend to leave, but I got interest from clients. Like I remember my cousin all of a sudden emailed me out of the blue saying, "Hey, um, I want to do a show, and I'm ready to pay for it in full." And I was like, "Holy crap!" And at the same time, this guy I went on a date with didn't work out going on a date. He wanted to do a show and wanted 10 episodes. And then I had like another contact of mine.
Love
And
it.
then Beyond High Performance had a contract renewal. And then the only reason why I changed was because my shows were going to be remote, so I was going to farm them off and do it on the side. But then they wanted to film in person, so I was actually forced to make a
Mm-hmm.
choice of like I had actually again I only had enough clients for 3 months towards the end of the year, enough
Oh.
contracts, but it was going to make me more than my full-time job. And I
Mm.
was like, oh shoot, what do I do? This is like a dream show,
Yeah.
hard decision to make. But then I was like, well, I still have value. I know I do a good job here. Let me give them a proposal. So I gave them a
Mm-hmm.
proposal to say, hey, what if I stayed on with you as a contract producer, at least for
Yeah.
3, 6 months, and then work on, my dream? And they said yes.
Wow.
And so then they became my client, the School of Greatness. Um,
I love this so much. I really do. I love it so much.
and then I signed up for an office down the street from them, and was recording my shows down the street of my office, popping over there, doing recordings. And then it got to the point where, and then at that point, I had space to start to get more clients and start to get more referrals and interest. And the end of the year was slow, but at the beginning of the year, I got two bigger shows, and then from
Mm-hmm.
there, I mean, we can go into the story, but I mean, it just steamrolled. It just snowballed actually at that point
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
like one guest on one of my shows was like so impressed with the experience. She then ended up signing for two shows, and then another referral will come here and another renewal here. And then it just grew. Um,
Yeah.
and then it got to the point where I had to grow more to then keep up with, the
Yeah.
people, and our team had to grow because there's no way one person can do 17 shows. We have a
Yeah.
team of 14, a mix of producers and editors and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we're able to scale so much is because there's a dedicated producer and editor on a couple of shows before they hit capacity. Um,
Gotcha.
so yeah, so it
Mm-hmm.
literally just grew again by word of mouth. But then at that point, I had the foundation, and I was able to then take the leap because I got a couple clients that were on retainer ongoing. So then I
Mm-hmm.
was able to actually take the leap and then focus more, and it just continued to snowball. So yeah, so now we're at
Wow.
17 by what, August,
Wow.
when we had four
Wow.
at the beginning of the year.
No, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so I have to ask these nuggets, okay? Because you are around a lot of influential people, a lot of people that people look up to or learning from, you know. Any nuggets you can share with us from either Red Table or from Lewis Howe's podcast or people that were on the show? Any nuggets you could share. Now, before we continue, I want to let you know that if you are looking for a more personal touch in your own life and you want to design your own remarkable life, we would love to work with you at Whole Self Wealth. So reach out to us at Whole Self Wealth so we can elevate you and transform you to that next level. Sometimes we just need a coach. Sometimes we need a partner to partner up with us to really make it to those next levels, right? I want to let you know that our team is here for you. I want to connect with you so we can design what's next for you. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, I mean, with Lewis, I mean, especially with the super duper high profile people I encountered, they were all so chill and so
Yeah.
calm when I met them,
Mm-hmm.
and just normal people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so interesting, like hearing their like conversations like about things. It's like, I remember I was in the room with Rhonda Byrne, who created The Secret. Like, what the crap?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does that
Mm-hmm.
happen? And she's just the coolest, sweetest person who had an idea for something and went for it. All
Yeah.
these people who are famous had an idea something and went for it. Why do
Mm-hmm.
I have to go to a full-time 9 to 6 job for the rest of my life? Why can't I be that founder? What's the difference between me and being the next Disney? What's the difference between me and making the next Apple? Like, all those people
Yeah.
had a dream. Why can't you do it? So
Yeah.
with all the people that I've met, it came from them making a decision and then staying focused on that decision and really riding the wave
Mm-hmm.
of like where it takes you. But really, it's like when you find something that you love, I find something that I love and that works with podcasts, and I've leaned in. you know
Yeah.
it's like I'm not just learning production. I'm learning guest prep. I'm learning editing. There was a time where I was
Mm-hmm.
editing a ton of shows because we didn't have that many editors. So I know how to edit. Sometimes I edit things on the side if we're like in a time crunch or in a budget crunch or something like that. So I
Yeah.
think it's all about like making a decision and doing what you have to do. you know
Mm-hmm.
like I just
Mm-hmm.
do what I have to do.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. And another thing that I really like too is I've noticed throughout you sharing bits of your journey is that you don't immediately give them that no. It's like, how can I hold on to this client and maybe do this part time? How can I hold on to this instead of just
Yeah.
giving them an outright no? How can I make this work? And I
Yep.
think that's sometimes people will think, oh, I have to choose A or B. And you're like, no, how do I
Yeah.
have A and B
Right.
and make that
Oh,
work
and
for
it's
me?
and it's a negotiation tactic too. It's like what obviously the rules of negotiations, you start high. I mean, sorry, your rate.
Mm-hmm.
You start with what you want, but then you know what you'll do it for.
Mm-hmm.
So show your value because you are
Yeah.
that valuable. And this is a lesson I wish I actually would have done more, where I was trying to sign so clients so fast. I was saying the low rates and then we were signing really fast. And actually Chris Doe says if somebody signs the client 3 times, like if somebody signs for your rate 3 times, that means it's too low if they sign really fast,
Mm-hmm.
so like
Mm-hmm.
always give like what you want and then what you can do it for, and understanding your margins. That's also a lesson that I learned with, as you grow a business, expenses go, you have to like up your margins. um
Mm-hmm.
but I'd say, yeah, like when you're going for it, like start with where you are, but then a lot of times they'll come to you be like, oh, that's no expensive, what can you do it for? And then that's when you negotiate. And that's when you're just like, that like either this could be like an extra client or the client that you need to eat. So then you know what you'll do it for. Start with what you want,
Mm-hmm.
but then
Yeah.
negotiate, but then do it for like a 3 month contract. So they know
Yeah.
that, your value is 650 an episode, but you'll do it for 500 an episode for a limited time basis. And then you give them 800 an episode quality, and then they'll
Yeah.
renew for you, and then they'll
Yeah.
refer you, and then you help them
Mm-hmm.
grow,
Yeah.
but make sure
Yeah.
you take care of
Good.
yourself too. But like, I don't say take no for an answer if I don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bottom line where if it's just too low, I mean, you just can't do anything like that.
Yeah.
And there's lots of competitors for it, but I know my value. I know what we offer. I know how we can grow things, and I know where I've came from, and the knowledge that I have with working on these professional shows means
Mm-hmm.
something and costs something.
Yeah. I, key and cost something because you have access and just the knowledge, the skill set at a whole nother level, you
Hmm.
know, at these
Right.
top shows. So it's not even just doing 17 shows. It's like, these
Yeah.
are the top shows and you've been awarded for this. Like, and people keep calling you back. I say, even with the referrals, keep getting that just shows like your work ethic and what you're putting out,
Hmm.
is of
Yeah.
next level talent, which is amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of a tricky subject, I would say, is growing the team.
Mm.
Growing the team sometimes can be tricky, can be complicated. Sometimes it can
Yeah.
get a little bit messy.
Yeah.
Um, what was your who? What position was your first hire, and why?
So my position, that was my first hire. Well, always an editor because I didn't want to edit anymore. So that was easy. But my
Hmm.
first like hire, so I've always had an editor. But my first
Yeah.
hire. Oh, he was a hire. Jeremy was my first editor, and he was great.
Hmm.
Um, oh no, Rethu and Hammond first, and then Jeremy. So I've always had like editors. But my first producer hire, his name is Steven, and he's been with me now, I think, almost 3 years. And he was my first hire, and that was an opportunity to impart my knowledge as a producer to someone else,
Hmm.
to then take over a show so I could grow. And he's
Yeah.
produced now 1, 2, 3 shows with us. Um, and is just growing and doing amazing. And he's been promoted to senior producer with all his knowledge. So Steven was a first hire, and that was something I needed to do because, you know, that's the only way I could do more, is if I had somebody
Yeah.
taking over what I was doing. And I learned,
Hmm.
showed him the ropes, taught him all the things. And with new team members, you have to always be like patient with like their learning process,
Hmm.
because it takes time for any team member to learn. But he's been really great about being proactive and just like learning and growing and things like that. So yeah, Steven was my first hire.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's say we're going way back to beginnings of Rainbow Creative, right?
yeah.
I just want to know, like, what is it that you would say has been the biggest, aside from hard work, the biggest thing that helped catapult your career, your success, aside from
Coaching.
hard work? Because we know you're a hard worker. Coaching.
Yeah.
I love that answer.
Yeah. Having a really good coach, investing in myself to
Mm-hmm.
have accountability.
Mm.
Because I remember I gave my coach a goal of 15 shows when we started coaching this year. We're at
Yeah.
17, so I've upped it to 20. But he was like, how can you, then he gave me advice of like, how can you dive in and actually get more business from your clients? So then I came up with Rainbow Creative Podcast branding, because we're doing graphic design and,
Yeah.
and social media and podcast art and photography. And now that's another line item of our business, which actually gets us more revenue from our clients, from
Mm-hmm.
there. And then now that's actually another line of business that can be a paid lead in to get more leads.
Yep.
Like working with a coach, I was like, hey, I want to commit to this. And he's like, how are you going to get there? let's outreach to 50 people a week. Or how am I going to do that? Well, let me reach out to someone who's really good at BD and that's connected to the podcast industry. And she's reaching out to 50 people a week. And I have meetings set up on my calendar every week to grow. And with working with a coach, it like elevates me and I have commitments. Now, sure, you can set these commitments in yourself, but we're really good about getting off the hook. There's other things that we can do. But when you're investing and then paying someone to keep you on the hook and you actually sign a contract that you have to fill your commitments, that's what gets you to another level. That's how I like focused and like funded fundraised for my film Human. That's why I started Rainbow. That's why I applied to like these network jobs. That's why, we went to 15 shows and now we've shattered through that. We're probably going to close 20 to 25 shows by the end of the year. And now what's next? Okay, now let's look at the team structure. Let's look at our margins. Let's look at the little things that we need. I'm very much in the heart part of growth. But every time things get hard, I remember this one phrase that keeps coming back to me. Like when I'm lost, I just say, be still and know that you're protected and provided for always. Thinking about my journey, just like looking at that story that told, none of that stuff should have happened. It happened because I made a decision, because it continues to show up. Because at one point after every client, I was like crying, and then I was just like, okay, I'm crying too much. It's like, we get it. You're in flow. You're grateful. Like, calm down. So now I
get used to it here. Okay.
With like maybe a glass of wine, and then continue.
Good.
And then I have to do the work. Because after they sign, then you have to set the meetings, and then you have to like do the outlines, and so I mean, there's something to be said to get to capacity. We're almost at capacity. So like soon we might not be able to take clients to the new year because we have to focus on the clients that we have.
What's the hardest part about running Rainbow right now?
Operations. It's so much. Like I was like thrust into being a founder. When you get more team members, you have to have like HR conversations to be in compliance with different states. We went from remote recording to in person, which meant I had to hire a lawyer to redo our agreements, and that money had to come from me, and figuring all that out, and learning about things like production insurance and like those things about like travel and per diem. So I reached out to some operations people through my network who helped like get things organized, and I had to invest in that, so it was like with the growth came a lot of learning. And then also the hardest part was like when like being okay that the decision that I've made previously was with the information that I had available to me. So don't feel guilty for not knowing something. The opportunity is to, now that you have the information, what can you learn from it? And so this last period of 3 months of growth has been the biggest learning opportunity that I had. It's like, I wish I would have had a 20 to 40% margin, but I didn't know why I had to. And now I know why I have, because every new client means I have to buy a new hard drive, which means I have to increase my Frame.io storage, which means I have to increase my Slack storage, which means I have to increase my Google storage. Like every new hire is another monthly cost, which ends up your operational expenses. And what are bill backs? I didn't know all this information, but now that I know all this information, we structure our deals differently. We do a 10% production fee. We do like all these things, so the operations part has been tough because we grew just like so fast, and I was like learning along the way. So now I'm at a place of like pausing, organizing, doing things with definitely like taking a beat before I make a decision, because more is on the line now. So
Gotcha. If you could change anything, and it doesn't mean that you would, is there anything you would change at all about your journey somewhere in there? Is there something where like, oh, maybe I would have done this, and not necessarily regret, but I would have done something differently? Like how you mentioned having a little bit more margin when you started.
Right.
Is there another thing like that? If you had to go back and change something, would you shift it sooner?
I mean, always the thing is like have more savings before you make the leap, but it's going to run out. So
I love it. It's going to run out. Okay.
you're going to have to continue to hustle. So, but that is a key thing. I should have gone with more savings, but I went with more of the dream and figured it out along the way. So I wish I didn't have
Yeah.
that stress, that pressure. So, but I mean, I think that also goes down to even deeper things of, not growing up with the best financial knowledge, which is actually a race and generation thing, and
Yeah. Yeah.
feeling shame for the information that I didn't have and things like that. So that's a big learning experience. But that's when I reached out for help. So I reached out to like an accountant and then take over our books to like help things organize
Yeah.
and things like that. So sure, the savings thing, but it's always going to run out, and people like know that. Maybe would have not hired as fast, but I needed to,
Yeah.
because I needed to, give the client the attention that they needed, because I was feeling
Yeah.
overwhelmed. I would have taken a beat on my operations hires until I looked at the numbers, but I didn't really know what to do. I needed their help to even look at that. So I can't, like, I don't know what I would
Yeah.
have done differently. I
Yeah.
mean, sure,
Yeah.
savings more, because I think when I make a decision, I do make them fast, but I also reach out to my coach. I reach out to my roommate. I talk it through,
Great.
before I do
Great.
it. There are other things that, I could make decisions a little like slower on, but I'm just a fast mover and entrepreneur. And entrepreneur, there's two ways to do it. You can stop and move slow, or break things. I definitely break things. But I probably broke a little too many things. So there's probably like, I would go back and be like, oh, I didn't need to, maybe take that vacation while we're building. That may have been the thing, that I regret, because I was like depending on like this hustle and this client. That's what I would change. I would not, like, even like what I found, like sometimes even clients will say, I'm signing, and then say, actually, I remember one thing happened where somebody lost their job and somebody got sick right before they were supposed to sign for their agreement, and they had to prioritize themselves.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shoot, like now I have to like hustle more. So like being like, even if you are like making a lot, definitely start stripping things. So I started stripping things out of my life like later, after those things happened, after I learned that lesson, because until it is signed and paid, like I literally had a client saying, yep, I'll sign this week, and then said, actually work got too busy, let's look until September. And then that was something 2 months,
Yeah.
that was income
Yeah.
I then started to expect, because it was literally in writing that it was happening, but until it's signed and paid, it doesn't exist. So I would say the advice for myself is live on less while you're building the dream. Even if you
Yeah.
can hustle to get more, and I always hustle to get more,
Yeah.
but that offers a lot of stress. It's like, that's why I have to work long hours sometimes, because these unexpected things happen. Like that's a real thing that's happened. And now we've gotten to a place where we have this amazing tracker, and things are structured and organized, and
Yeah.
still some room for improvement, but now we have like a plan to get there. But it took a lot of mistakes, a lot of mistakes to get there, because you're used to operating. Like I was used to like, going to the expensive gym and doing that. And then I realized, I'm like, actually, I don't need to spend that. I can actually go to the park and work out at my apartment for
Yeah.
2 months or 3 months,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yep.
that's okay right now,
Yep.
because that $300 a month is my Frame.io membership and my Google membership, and that matters before that matters.
Yeah.
So what do I have
Prioritizing.
to do to get that? What actually matters at that point?
Yeah.
You'll get back up to that, and it'll help you restructure it and things like that. But yeah,
Yeah. What would you say is something that a lot of people get wrong in the podcast industry, because it's growing rapidly year after year after year? So what
yeah.
is something that you see that maybe is holding people back, or you would do a little differently?
I would say a lot of times people focus on just getting the biggest guest with the biggest reach, and thinking that will grow the show. That helps, but consistency is what grows your show. So, you're actually not going to get the attention of these people with 1 million followers until you actually have, 50 to 100 episodes under your belt, when you're getting several thousand downloads. And what I found, that even in like, when we were working on Romney's show, we were getting some high profile names, but then our audience was saying, we actually want to hear real stories. Like when people listen to podcasts, they want to hear real stories. If you focus on your mission, if you focus on a good interview, you focus on production quality, there's so many resources out there to help you do it. I mean, if you sign up for Riverside or Spotify for podcasters, there's literally so many guides to help you figure it out. Descript is amazing to help like clean up audio, Adobe Enhance, like all those different things. But when it comes to growing a show, don't get so stuck on the biggest guests. Focus on consistency. Get a show out a
Mm-hmm.
week, get a show out every 2 weeks, and don't stop, because
Mm-hmm.
that growth is how you do it. So my shows that have grown in their first seasons may get a handful of big guests,
Mm-hmm.
and then get a bunch of people. And then after we do the first season, then we start getting outreached too. Then we can actually
Mm-hmm.
go to the bigger guests with numbers, saying we had an explosive interview with this person and this person, and this is the mission, and then these are our top episodes. Because what you'll find is some of the top episodes will may not be the person with the biggest name, and you might
Mm-hmm.
find your audience actually doesn't even care.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
lean into the mission, lean into the conversation, because you might be finding the next Joe Dispenza. You don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you
Gotcha.
know
Yeah, that's good. I like that. It's consistency. And it's hopeful
right.
too, because not everyone has that reach of, oh, let me get this high profile person, or even know how to reach out to someone that may be high
They're hard to get,
profile.
even on a top show. I've worked on the top
Mhm.
shows, and those people are hard to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Do
know
you have any crazy stories where it's like how you maybe secured a guest for one of the shows or anything like that?
um I mean, I've secured some pretty big guests, but it's even in like my first seasons of new shows like 3 years ago. It was because I just put together a good email. It's like, I had a document that had, like, I remember I was getting bigger guests on shows before they even recorded, because we recorded a trailer. I focused on making a
Mhm.
good trailer. I did a description. I did some
Mhm.
research on them, and then I asked, and they would start to say yes. Sometimes they would say
Yeah.
no, but if you sell it right, and like what I tell people every time when they ask, what's your best advice before you become an entrepreneur, is to get a sales job. Because until you learn how to
Mhm.
sell, because the
Yeah.
difference, especially if you're going out as an artist, artists are
Mhm.
artists, but you get to business through learning commerce and business development.
Mhm.
It is with my
Mhm.
skills of networking, with my skills of sales, which is the reason why I am where I am now. Because when, like, I know how to structure a conversation, I know how to talk numbers, I know how to negotiate, I know how to follow up. You know, I learned
Yeah.
all those sales skills at WeWork, at Mindspace, at Apple, in
Mhm.
retail, at when I worked for Sage Natural Wellness, I learned sales skills there. So it was
Yeah.
actually all my skills, sales and startup and partnership experience, that allowed me to take the leap from being a artist to a business owner.
That's good. That's really good. Awesome. So, speaking of being a business owner, what are
Mhm.
two business tools? We already know coaching has been instrumental in your career throughout,
Yeah.
but what are two business tools that you use that you would say have driven success in your business?
Yeah, what I would say is my invoicing and contract software, HoneyBook.
Hmm.
Because like when you're sending a contract, you don't want to send like something just like on maybe DocuSign or Sign and send me a Venmo. That's not professional. That's not the way
Yeah.
things work. Um, so fine. I mean, there's so many different softwares like this, but I've used HoneyBook for like the past 5 years, and they're a both CRM plus contract, and they have beautiful templates. And
Hmm.
you can either load in your own contract, or they have other contracts there. They have ways to pay per credit card, ACH, reminders, and things like that. So HoneyBook is my all-in-one tool that I use.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and let's see, Slack is great. I think Slack is really an amazing communication tool, because not
Yeah.
only like you have to grow to a team to really for it to even make sense.
Hmm.
But even when I had a team of two, I mean, the cost is, there's so many, you can do a free version for forever, and when
Yeah.
you start paying, you pay per user when they're active or whatever. But Slack has been a really great communication tool, because I remove things from, being text and being messy, to being like organized and things. And then also with Slack, when you're working with companies, there's external connections. So I'm able to Slack them
Hmm.
as well, which makes doing business a lot faster. But
Hmm.
actually, I would say my number one tool I use is Superhuman, the email client. I get through
Hmm.
emails like this. It organizes it. You know, I can set reminders for emails. I have read receipts, which is so helpful for so many different reasons.
Yeah.
It's super fast. The search is amazing. Like, I live on Superhuman. So my three tools
Oh, I
are,
need that.
oh, Superhuman is the best. I'll send you a referral. Superhuman,
Yeah.
Slack, and HoneyBook.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for over
And
delivering too, because I only asked for two.
Right. Oh, and my vibes. I like live on vibes. So vibes is a CBD and like calm energy
Yep.
drink. I
Mm-hmm.
actually have the drink right here. I've been drinking it this whole show. Plug for vibes, the
Yeah.
gentle energy, which has 100 milligrams of like a green tea energy and magnesium for focus. I can't live without my vibes. So that's
We love
a
vibes. Yeah.
mojo hack. Yeah.
Yes. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. You're
Awesome.
amazing. Absolutely
Oh, thank you.
amazing. It was a pleasure having you on the show. But before you go, I want to
Yeah.
do a quick rapid fire, which
Yeah.
is I'm going to ask you this or that. And you just give me a quick answer, shoot it out, whatever you got.
Okay.
You can give a reason why. I'm not holding that back, but whatever
Okay.
you have.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. Rapid fire round, podcast or books?
Podcasts and
Mm-hmm.
audiobooks, but really podcasts. So
Okay. Uh-huh.
yeah, see,
Uh-huh.
audiobooks for me are just more podcasts.
Mm-hmm. Got you. Okay, yeah, I can see why you say that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Breakfast or dinner?
Breakfast. Breakfast is the best. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Owning your own business or being on contract with a lot of other companies?
That's hard.
Yeah.
I say owning my own business because I just make my own contracts. I'm in the driver's seat at that point.
Yeah. Awesome. Would you say you are a morning bird or a night owl?
Definitely more morning. Um, at night I'd be falling asleep like 9, 10 o'clock most days. So
Yeah.
you say the party start at 9. I'm like AM. Like
Right.
we are in our nightly routine. We are
Yeah.
pushing 40. So definitely a morning person because that's before the emails start when you have your own
Yeah.
voice and things like that. So.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Last one. Marketing or sales? And you kind of touched on this a little bit.
That's interesting because I've worked in both.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
That's why I asked this one specifically.
Probably marketing because marketing is sales.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Tell
like
me
you're
about
selling a
that.
brand and like learning
Yeah.
because like marketing it's like if you have to get a powerful clip that'll get viral, which will get views, you're selling the service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Marketing is all about finding creative ways to sell and market. So I'd say
Mm-hmm.
like marketing. Once I learned marketing, because when I started with Disney and corporate, that was when it went from sales to marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that marketing experience maybe even helped me in my other sales jobs. But like I naturally throughout sales, since I learned marketing at Disney, I went into like how can we market this? How can we do creative approach? And I loved working in marketing when I did because I got to create like content all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like I was constantly creator.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I also love how you went back to I'm not going to choose. I'm just going to say both. I'm going to take both
Yeah, I still
because
take
this
both.
is that. Yeah. I still take both. I love that. Matthew, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your
Of
wisdom, your
course.
experience, your stories, your nuggets. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find the company at rainbowcreative.co, rainbowcreative.co. We're on Instagram at rainbowcreative underscore. And you can follow me and all my shenanigans at mojoadam underscore.
Awesome. And one more thing before you go. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, leave it 5 stars, and share it with a friend. That incredibly helps our channel out. And we don't want you to miss any amazing nuggets that could change your life in any way or someone you know. So please share this with a friend and remember, you have the power to design your remarkable life.